I watched an interesting YouTube video recently, and I shall link it above somewhere up here, about how you can escape wage slavery. And the chap was talking about how he has transitioned or is transitioning from being employed to being self-employed. And I also remember posting a comment on a video a while ago, and I can't remember the details of it. Something about having more autonomy in your financial life when you're self-employed. And somebody came back and said, well, if money's involved, whatever, you're not autonomous, which is true. And then I saw a newspaper article, which I think was the Telegraph. I'll post a screenshot of it here, which talked about, not, well, there were several elements to it, but one of them was about you not giving your money to the government because they're just using it to prop up people who don't work. And some of the comments underneath that newspaper article were quite lively. It was an interesting read, though. And so I thought I'd talk about this whole aspect of being more autonomous in money, not being a wage slave, or at least trying to minimise the damage caused by it and the risks taken by doing it. So I wanted to be self-employed because I wanted to be able to dictate my own work-life balance, doing things that I enjoyed, not spending 5 days a week doing jobs that I didn't enjoy and trying to cram all the things that I loved into the remaining 2 days of the week. And that began, gosh, when did that begin? 2008, sorry. When I applied to university, I'd moved to a brand new town. I'd just got a new job. It was a catastrophic mistake. It was one of the most toxic jobs I've ever had. And in fact, it has been that was my last full-time job for that 1 year in 2008. And at that point, I had decided I wanted to go to university and retrain the skills that I had to an industry standard, because I'd always been self-taught. So I then had to go around a year because I'd applied to university. Because I was a mature student, I didn't have to go through the same UCAS system as younger people. I didn't have to hit grades and things like that. And I went in to have the interview and meet the department and everything. And right there and then they said, right, you've got in. They saw enough in me that was worth training up. But I had applied too late in the year to get into that year. So I had to wait round a year. But at least I knew what I was going to be doing. It gave me something really positive to aim for. I was going to escape this wage slavery that I hated so much. So I had to do my year, and it was a really awful year. It was incredibly bad for my mental health. The people there were dreadful. I got an insight into a system which I've never forgotten. So I was working for a council, a city council, and the things I saw, I would never trust a council again. From the stuff that I saw in that department I worked for, it was just appalling. So I came out of that, good riddance to that, never looked back. 3 years of university, and I always said that when I went to university, I wanted to fully immerse in it. I didn't want to have to work. I wanted to just really enjoy it and treat it like a job. And we were lucky because it was a creative course. You could go in every day. You could go in every day and design and make and do what you wanted. You could use the time. So I treated it like a 9-to-5 job. And I would go in every day. I would do my designing. I'd do the work that I was meant to do, all that sort of thing. And it wasn't perfect. We were having to design on demand. We were having to design in areas that maybe we didn't have interest in. There were lots of aspects to the course that I had no interest in at all. And if I don't have interest in something, I just switch off completely. There were lots of things that I wasn't good at. My creative focus was quite narrow. I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I left university. And I spent the 3 years of my university setting up my fashion design business and treating the university time as a full-time job, and also doing photo shoots and designing my own stuff and building up my portfolio, learning to understand things like doing finances and setting up blogs and websites and all that sort of thing, and really starting to build up with that. And that meant that when I left university after the 3 years, I hit the road running. Now, I joined university at a time where you still got maintenance grants that you didn't have to pay back. They weren't loans, they were given to you. So I took out the full student loans. I didn't have anyone like parents who meant that they had to make a decision on how much money they were going to give me. Because I was an independent adult, I just got the full funding. So I took out all the funding, and you get this free maintenance grant to pay for your living expenses for the year. So I learnt a lot about downsizing, about living off the land. The house I was living in, I was able to turn the back garden into an allotment. I got chickens. I did all these things. And I was living in a community where there were lots of allotment people and make do amenders. So I learnt a huge amount about self-sufficiency, which was really, really handy. So I came out of university and I started the business. And although I've had to do little part-time jobs here and there ever since, I've never been trapped by them. And every time I've gone back and had to do a full-time job, like for a short time, might be a short contract, I've always been so glad when I've been able to leave, because it reminds me every time why that way of working just doesn't work for me. It doesn't suit me at all. So in terms of work-life balance, I have worked hard to keep my freedom. And the more I was in business, the less attractive going back into work felt. And I realised that I would rather spend less, earn less to keep that work-life balance. I didn't want to chase money because I was constantly hemorrhaging money. I'm not really into buying stuff. I used to be, but not on a massive scale. I'm not interested in spending my money on things. I don't have any subscriptions. I don't go clothes shopping, so to speak. I don't go on expensive holidays. I keep everything until it falls apart, where it breaks, where I can't fix it anymore. And that's just a mentality in me that works really well for me. So it means that over time, and particularly since I've lived here for the last almost 7 years and had to be very self-sufficient, there's no one else in my home, it's just me paying for everything, I have learnt to reduce my outgoings, because I've worked out by just being me what it is I really want. When you're living with somebody else, either as a family group or with a partner or friends or whoever, a lot of the things that they do financially, like they might have subscriptions, they might buy the latest phone, they might get a new car, they might go on holiday, it kind of bleeds into your life. And when you're on your own, you can decide exactly what you want to do. And I found that there were quite a lot of things I could strip out of my life financially, and I didn't miss them. So that meant that my outgoings have gone down a lot. There are still a lot of things I have to pay for. You know, there is a lack of autonomy there. I have to pay rent, I have to pay gas and electric, I've got phone bills, council tax, water, all the usual rubbish that most people pay for. But in terms of everything else, it's quite limited. And because I am self-employed, I get to pick and choose how I earn my money. And because I am self-employed, I also am able to claim back a lot of the expenses that most people in full-time work can't. So there are a lot of aspects of travel and of things that you buy for work that I can claim back. And it means that I'm always under that tax bracket, which means I get to keep more of my money for myself. So less consumption means I don't need as much money, which means I can afford to reduce my income and take back that work-life balance. So that's been really important for me. It means that, particularly with things like where YouTube is concerned. So YouTube is a tricky one because you start on YouTube and you're always chasing that number because you want to get monetized. And then you get monetized and then you're constantly trying to increase the amount of money that you earn every month. And there is a huge lack of autonomy in YouTube because your money for YouTube comes from Google. Because if you only post up videos and you're a monetized channel, all your income comes from advertising. And the advertising is from Google Ads because Google owns YouTube. And so if people don't watch the adverts, you don't make the money. So I use an ad block. So I can't complain about having a lower income on YouTube because I block everything. If there are sponsored ads, I click past them. I hate advertising. It's one of my real bugbears. I loathe advertising in every sense of the word because it has no effect on me. And I dislike having products shoved down my throat and being told this is what you need in your life to be a bigger, better person and for your life to be better, because it's not true. So for quite a while, I was fixated for the first year on just getting to monetization. And then I was fixated with trying to get the monetization up to a certain level where I could rely on it. And by rely on it, I mean that means that you start to become a wage slave because you're relying on a regular amount of money every month. And the only way you can do that is to perform better. So you make more videos. You investigate what are the best paying videos, and then you have to make better videos for those few extra pence. And before you know it, YouTube owns you. And I don't want to be owned by YouTube or Google. So this year I decided I'm going to post less videos. I'm going to post better videos, and to a certain extent I think I've achieved that in terms of content. But I'm posting less of them. And as things stand, February wasn't a good month, but I don't think that was necessarily because of me, because the month after is a really good month. And I haven't done anything different. I'm posting less videos. So I don't know what's going on there. So already I have now been able to say, fine YouTube, I don't need you. And that means I'm no longer dancing to their tune. I'm doing it for when I want to. And if YouTube doesn't pay money, who cares? So I'm now enjoying that again more because I am not feeling like it is my boss. So the problem is that you are always, in some way or another, a wage slave. If you need income, then you are a wage slave. Because somewhere or other that money comes into it and you need to make that money come in. And even if you do FIRE and you retire really early and, maybe you've drawn your pension early, you did really well, your investments are paying really well, you are still a slave to the system. Because if everything crashed tomorrow and your pension stops or your investment stopped, where is your money coming from? We are all tied to a money system which makes us all wage slaves in some way or another. It means that we all lack an autonomy. Unless you live in the middle of a field that you own and no one can take from you, and you do not need any sort of money at all. By that I mean you don't own a vehicle, you don't have solar panels because solar panels might break and you need to change them, and then you're also attached to the grid somehow, so you're attached to the money markets. Unless you are completely detached from any system that involves money, you are a part of the system. So when this person criticised me for saying, well, you might be self-employed but you're still not autonomous. None of us are autonomous. None of us are completely autonomous. Even people I watch things like Ben Fogle's New Lives in the Wild, and you see people who are in the middle of nowhere or being very self-sufficient, But there's always an element of their life that involves them needing to rely on money or provisions or something from somewhere else that is connected to money and wage slavery. But, you know, how hardcore do you want to go? You just need to have enough to be freer. And because my income comes from lots of little places, it gives me a little bit of protection, because the chances are only one thing's going to go down at once if something goes wrong. And that leaves all the other things still there. And I always try and make sure that I'm not living on the edge. So my income is always a bit higher than my outgoings. So if I do lose some part of my outgoings, it's a bit closer, but it's not catastrophic. And then, of course, you need to make sure that you do have financial backup, like emergency funds, for in case you need to top up a gap if you get a blip anywhere along the way. So that's really my journey, I suppose, into becoming freer from the system. And I cannot imagine anything worse than having to go back to the system and having to rely on it, because I have for most of my life relied on it and been let down by it. You know, I've worked for huge companies that you couldn't ever imagine going under, who, you know, you're going to work one day and they were telling you to go home because the company had gone under. And I'm not talking small businesses, I'm talking about great big businesses that knew and had planned for this closure, but didn't tell any of their staff until the last minute, because they don't want you to leave until you're no longer of any use. So I got caught out a few times with that. I tried to remain as flexible as possible in terms of work. I tried never to allow myself to become so tied to a job because I was so desperate for the income that I couldn't leave if I didn't enjoy the job anymore, or the job wasn't good for me. And I've always been able, within reason, to be able to leave a job that was not good for me. And that's really important. You need to be able to say, if this job doesn't work out, if something goes wrong and this is now bad for me personally, in whatever way that might be, that you can turn around and say, thanks but no thanks, I don't need this. Because once they've got you in the system and you can't leave, then you're in trouble. So always plan to be as autonomous as your life will allow it. We all have different levels of it. Mine's reasonably high, I would say, compared to a lot of people. But even a little bit of autonomy in your life that allows you to be able to say, I can leave this if I need to, I can walk away from this if it is bad for me, is really important. So I just thought I'd say that as a thing. It seemed like a worthy discussion point. And if you have comments, do add them. So I just thought I would say that and get that out of my system. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.